to be analyzed first. That has to be analyzed first. That will decide whether that plan is going to be sanctioned or not. So with related to that, we will move forward to the next part. See, is it visible? Visible, yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Okay, the EIA process in India is made up of the following phases. The first is the screening. Last time I shown the particular, see, same thing is there, just only description is given here more. See, this way the different steps are supposed to be involved in the sanctioning the EIA. That we see one by one now. Now first is the screening, then scope and consideration of alternatives, baseline data collection, impact prediction, assessment of alternatives and declaration of mitigation measures and environmental impact statement, public hearing, environmental management plan, decision making, and the monitoring the clearance conditions. So this way the different processes are involved in the EI, environmental impact assessment. The first is the screening. So screening is done to see the whether a project required environment clearance as per the statutory environment notifications. Screening criteria are based on scale of investment, how much investment is there, type of development and location. Now very important, where is the plant is going to be located. Okay, on that the screening is going to be. Some cases the screening also decide whether it is needed for the further sanctioning or not. That also we see here. See, many projects may have no significant environmental impact. So in that case, no need to perform the screening operation, but it is going to be decided on the basis of investment, how much investment is there, scale of investment, as well as type of development, whether industrial or other type of developments are there, as well as the location, very important location. If your location of investment, location of industry is near to the biodiversity region, your sensitive, eco-friendly or environment sensitive area, in that case, naturally, it is not going to be sanctioned. So what is the location? That is also very important aspect when you're dealing the first step, the screening. Second is the scope. Scoping is the process of dealing the terms of reference to the EI. It has to be done by the consultant in the consultation with the project proponent and guidance. It need be from the impact assessment agency. So impact assessment agency is there. From that we can find out the scope of that project. Then Ministry of Environment and Forest has published guidelines for the different sectors, which outline the significant issue to be addressed in the EIA study. The quantifiable impact are to be assessed on the basis of magnitude, prevalence, frequency, duration, and non-quantifiable impact, such as aesthetic and recreation. Is what some are measurable, some are not measurable. That impact also you have to consider what is the effect, what is the frequency, what is the duration, at what magnitude that impact is going to be generated. That has to be analyzed, and the significance in is commonly determined through the socio-economical criteria. After that, where the project could be significant impact are identified, the baseline status should be notified, and then likely to change these on the account of construction and operation of the proposed project should be predicted. So that is the scope. In the scope, if you see the scope of EA is the issue of impact. What is the impact? What is the magnitude? How much duration is there? Whether the tangible or non-tangible effects are there. Okay, whether allowed or we can say notable or measurable, non-measurable. That impact also there. So scoping the process by deciding which project possible alternatives are there. EI should focus only on the significant issues. EI should focus on only significant issues that comes under the scope. What is the scope of that project? That also important aspect when you're deciding the finalizing the EI. After that, the scoping is carried out in the discussion with the developers, competent authority and relevant agency, and ideally for and publicly. So that scoping is carried out in discussion between the developers and the particular authority and agencies and public to decide whether we can go for the project or not. Effective scoping enables limiting resources to be allocated to the best effect. So effective scoping decide whether the whatever those resources are there that is going to be effectively utilized or not, or that are considered under the heading of the scoping. Scoping is not mandatory under the EA directives. It is not mandatory under the EA directives, but these are the general steps you need to follow for getting the actual process or actual workout of the EI. Whose mic is on? Please switch off the mic. Now further moving for the next part. The screening is known, scoping is over. Now moving for the next part. Baseline studies. The baseline study should be undertaken for each alternative site. Baseline study should be considered for each alternative site so that the relative severity of the impact for each alternative can be assessed. Means what if again there are n number of possible cases are there or alternatives are there. If you perform A alternative, what will happen? If you perform B alternative, C alternative in this way, you have to find out the which alternative give the more impact that has to be neglect. Then you have to minimize the impact which create the lesser impact on the environment, and it does not affecting on the overall production or overall cost benefit analysis of that project. So you have to make the alternative and get the study and finalize the concern alternative which create lesser impact and making the considering the proper cost benefit ratio also. New field works may be necessary if relevant data is not already available. New field work is necessary. Example, ecological survey. If relevant data is not available, if you are consulting any for example any water park nearby the forest area, in that case what is the effect of this waterfalls or water activities, or we can say on the overall environment, overall ecology of that area. That also we consider. I think most of the, if you see most of the that water activities, many water activities, or we can say supposed to be when you constructing nearby that particular forest area. So in that case, you need to be consider what is the effect on the overall ecology. Then alternatives. EIA is ideally undertaken for a project and its alternative. Different location, scale and design. Different location, scale and design that will decide. It needs to be decided for taking the correct alternative. Alternative are the raw material of EIA. Alternatives are what? Raw material, because for the EIA, this is the raw material. Means what? If you take the A raw material, what will happen? B raw material, what will happen? C raw material. Raw material means what? The particular location, particular site, particular scale for that design. So that is the alternative needs to be considered. US Council on Environment Quality has described and discussion of alternative as the heart of the EIA. So this is the baseline, or this is the, we can say, alternatives need to be studied properly so that effective or correct or we can say efficient option can be selected. If you select one site and on that site only we are supposed to construct industry, so in that case what will happen, and their effects only that is study available with you. But if you have the 2-3 sites and on the 3 slides, if you perform the same alternative, same workout, then we can understand how much effective for industry with minimized loss of environment. So many EI fail to consider alternatives because many EIs fail because of they are not considering the alternatives. Impact assessment. Next heading is what? Impact assessment. Under the impact assessment, you need to be considered evaluating the significance of impact to be identified. Significance can be determined through the professional judgment, reference, and regulations. Reference and regulations that particular impact has to be determined. Potentially determined to significant. The conclusion of impact assessment can be ultimately be used by the decision makers when the determining the fate of the project of application. Project of application. So, so the impact is also important aspect when you're dealing with this particular alternatives. You have to understand the different alternatives, create the study and find out the impact. And that impact decide whether you have to go for the next step or not. So this is the conclusion. The conclusion of impact assessment can be ultimately be used by the decision makers. So decision makers will decide that will take the decision on the impact of that project on the environment. So that is the parameter need to be considered when you're dealing with the EIA. Then the mitigation. Mitigation is what we have to take the measures. So negative impact on the environment identified during the EIA can be alleviated through the mitigation measures. Means you have to take the remedial measures so that the particular impact has to be minimized. Means for example, any discharge from the wastewater is there, and that wastewater pollute the river, nearby river. Then how to take the mitigation? How to take the remedial measures? So we can treat more that wastewater or we reuse that wastewater in the industrial process so that less amount of wastewater is going to be produced. Now zero waste concept comes to the picture. Means whatever the waste produced from that industry, that waste is going to be utilized in the same industry. So such type of new technology, such type of new concept come to the picture, that is the zero. So the mitigation measures you need to be consider. Mitigation hierarchy that avoid, reduce, give the remedy, compensate and enhance. So this way the mitigation step analysis is there. You have to avoid as much as possible. If not possible, then reduce. If not possible, reduce the remedy to take this one, or if not reduce, then how to compensate and enhance the overall effect. So this way the mitigation has to be performed. The impacts remaining after the mitigation are known as a residual impact. Impact remaining after the mitigation also, some of the impact is going to remain as it is, because the impacts are also tangible, non-tangible, measurable, non-measurable. So measurable impact we can control by providing the rules and regulation treatment, but some non-measurable impacts are there, that emotional impacts over there. Okay, so that we cannot reduce. So that is the residual impact also there. So legislation abstracts the proper process of design and development. So this way the mitigation steps are there: avoid, reduce, remedy and compensate and enhance. So the mitigation is also important aspect. Once you understand the impact, then we can go for the mitigation. Then EI preparation. Next one is what, once you decide, once you have the documentation for the mitigation, then we can go for the EI preparation or review. The environmental impact statement is the formal document which include information on the development and information related to the screening, scoping, baseline study, alternative, etc. Common requirement to include the non-technical summary. Common requirement to include a non-technical summary. Some non-technical summary has to be introduced under this EIA. Once the complete, the EIA submit to the authority. Once the completed, the EIA submit to the authority, competent authority, along with the planning application. Once you have the document ready for the EIA, then you have to submit the authority. The EIA is often reviewed either formally or informally. Okay, after submission of the authority give some signals or give some notification or give some recommendation. You can review this part, you can change this part. so that either formally or informally that has to be reviewed so that further process of sanction can be done properly. The review enables the competent authority to decide whether the EI is accurate, and unbiased. So the review enables the competent authority to decide whether EI is adequate, properly designed, properly consider all aspects, whether whatever the calculation they have made are correct or wrong, and that is unbiased. Means what there is no any we can say unbiased things. Biased things are not going to be accepted here. So that is to be considered when you deciding the finalizing the EI. Then after that, you have to go for the public. Means you have to public opinion is very important when you deciding to construct any building, any project in that area. Now, what are the people living in that area? What is the opinion of that project about that area? Or if last time I'm giving the example of the refinery, which is to be installed, which is to be considered the Kopan area, but the people nearby area is going to be object because of their fish active or we can say machinery bandona or quality of land is going to be avoided, disturbed. So that as considered the public opinion. So the public consultation is very important when you're finalizing the EIA report. The post-project monitoring means once the project is going to be sanctioned, then it is not necessary, it is not considering parameter that is only to get the EI and start the company. But after the construction, after the starting the company, it need to be monitored whether the what are the things they explain, what are the planning they are making in the EIA, whether they are followed or not. So monitoring should determine accuracy of original prediction, degree of deviation from the prediction, possible reason of any deviation, extent to which mitigation measures have achieved their objective. Means what are the predictions they are making? Means if the particular coal industry is there, from the coal industry, if the 100 megawatt electricity generated for generation of 100 megawatt electricity, so much thousands of coal is going to be utilized, and from that so thousands of coal, so much amount of CO2 emission going to takes place. So these are the calculations, some predictions also are there. So whether the predictions are near to the which was stated or not, which are defined or not, that has to be checked. The accuracy and original prediction, or how much deviation from the prediction, what is the probable reason why the actual stated and actual happening on the site, that has to be considered. What are the reasons behind that and how to mitigate that particular things. So these are the post-project monitoring is also important aspect when you're dealing with this EI post-project monitoring. Then construction impact also there, traffic movement, dust, mud. So these are things. So this is general about EI, their process to be involved in that particular part.